Show of hands, who is excited to hear Dr. Dorothy speak tonight? Great.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice of you.
Me too.
My first time speaking.
Yes, first time here. So thank you for joining us and helping us to support Preservation 2020. I see a lot of familiar faces out there. It means a lot to me that you're here. This has been a labor of love. This beautiful historic structure is about to turn 200 next May and has meaning in this town as well as the entire region. It is a historical landmark that deserves to be restored and preserved for future generations. First, before we begin, I want to thank my team, Executive Co-Chair Charlie Smith, 81 years young and has more energy than anyone I know. Also, Leslie Judge and Len Suma in the back there. We make a great team. I'll have you know that we've been working on this since October of 2018, starting at zero. And I'm proud to say we have since raised $70,000.
Wow. Congratulations. Congratulations.
We have a long way to go. So we appreciate you all being here to support this fine effort. We look forward to seeing many of you once a month throughout the year, and you can get more information in your program or online. And also to be sure that you guys join us for refreshments afterwards in the parish hall. I'm grateful and honored to introduce Dr. Dorothy. She's a national and international TV and radio personality. She is the head of a 3,500 speakers bureau and has appeared on major TV networks and TED Talks. Dr. Dorothy, thank you for sharing your evening with us.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's really, thank you, hon. It really is a joy to be here. I'm kidding, obviously. I've been speaking a long time, for about 30 years. But what's a few decades among friends? So tonight what I'm going to be speaking about is leadership. And it's in your paper, so I'm going to stick to that. And I truly believe every single one of us on this planet are called to leadership, no matter where you come from, no matter your history. I believe I was raised Irish Catholic. My birth father is from Kilkenny, and my adopted father is from Cork. So growing up in South Boston, Massachusetts, we have a wee bit of the brogue walking with us as I was growing up. And someone asked earlier if I would say a wee bit about my history. I was born, and I was raised in an orphanage. And I was later adopted and by an Irish alcoholic policeman and raised in the housing projects of South Boston. So I spent a good number of my years in detention. And when I wasn't in detention, I was hanging on street corners, having a very good time running from police and enjoying my journey at the time. When I wanted out of Southie, there was really no way out. I tried to go to college. We weren't allowed, girls weren't allowed to go to college at the time. And I share this with you to show you that leadership and defining your journey is always, always in your hands. What happens to us isn't. How we choose to live the leadership of our own journey always is. When I wanted out and I wanted to go to college, my dad certainly couldn't afford it. After myself, he adopted an older boy and then later adopted me and had a number of others and couldn't afford to send any of the girls to college. And since girls were a waste of money because they got married and stayed home and raised their children, you wasted a good education. So he didn't like that idea to begin with. So I said, okay, never mind, I'll be independent. I'm going to go to nursing school, and I got myself a job and put myself through. That didn't work because although I went for an interview at County Hospital Nursing, discovered that I went to an unaccredited inner city high school. So no nursing school in the United States could accept me. And so, come on in, make yourself at home. And here I am, a guest. Make yourself at home. Food's up front. And so then what ended up happening quickly with that was that I applied to, I was engaged and married. When my school, 50 started freshman class, about 15 of us graduated. You know, in the inner city, graduation from high school is a success story. And about 15 of us made it, but you graduated in May, you get married in June. And as my dad would say, you marry your own kind, so I was engaged to Michael Daniel Flaherty. because why not? Who else was I going to be engaged to? And so we made out well every Friday night up at the parking lot. So I thought, what could go wrong, you know? And so I wasn't going to go into nursing school. I wasn't going to go into college, and I wanted out of the projects. And so I said, you know what? I will join the Sisters of Mercy, and I'll become a Catholic nun. And I found out the Catholic Church doesn't allow illegitimate children in the convent. So that killed that idea as well. And again, sharing this so you can see our journeys. Every one of us have had obstacles. Every one of us have had people say, you can't. And you're trying to lead a life defined by what you want and what you expect. But you don't always get to lead the life you imagine. Because I bet if any one of us looked back now at what did we think our life would look like when we were 18, how many of you have the life you imagined you were going to have when you were 18 years of age? There isn't a thing in my life that looks the way I imagined. Michael and I had our 20 children named. Colleen, Maureen, and Shane, and Sean, and Eileen. We had every one of them down, and we knew when we were going to have a boy and when we were going to have a girl, because it was all set up. This is how we were going to do it. And none of that ended up being the reality. So eventually one of the sisters, one of my teachers said to me, Dorothy, are you going to marry Michael? I said, I guess, because I can't get out. And she said, well, let me see, what do you want to do? I said, I even tried the Sisters of Mercy. And she laughed and said, why? You're always in detention. I would think you'd want to have nothing to do with nuns. And I said, but you can't send a nun to detention. And in fact, you can, because I did become a nun. They wrote to 1,000 communities. She and Father Mike wrote to 1,000 communities, found one in Quebec that worked with prostitutes. And they said, we work with prostitutes, we'll take a risk on an illegitimate child. And so here I am, walking with street English, with a wee bit of the brogue, and I went to Quebec, where they only speak French. And we spoke for an hour a day in French. And I smiled and nodded, and I became the hairdresser for nuns under a habit. You know, so it really didn't matter if I knew what I was doing or didn't know what I was doing, because they were going to put the coif on and then they would disappear before they got out. So life happened. But when Mother sent me and said, I'm sending you to the mission, she sent me to Maine, because Maine's filled with French Canadians. I thought Africa, she thought Maine, so close and yet so far. So I went to Maine and I worked with the French Canadians in Maine, taught in high school, and then ended up working in residential treatment. Mother Superior said, Sister, I'm sending you to college. I said, Mother, they won't let me in. She said, they will if I send you. If any of you have seen the nuns and the old habits we used to wear with their hands in their sleeves, they can intimidate any dean of any university you have ever met. And when Mother Superior said, Sister James Marie will be going to your college, they said, of course, Mother Superior. And Sister James Marie went. And once you have a BA, nobody cares when you get your MA and your PhD where you went to high school. And I share that because there's so much humor in all of that, and we're blessed. We're all blessed. There's many, many more stories. I won't go into most of them because I already confessed them, and it's okay. They're forgiven. But to share with you that with all of the things we have done with our lives, we truly are the leaders of our own lives. And I've been a CEO since '86. I have owned 4 companies I have founded. And I've been extremely blessed in many, many, many ways, far from the projects of Southie, far from the Mustangs and the Saints and the Aces and all the different gangs I hung with over the years when I was quite young and thought I was old and sophisticated and realized what a sweet, innocent soul she was. All right? So looking at it now as a woman who has founded 4 companies and who has had many, many people on my payroll, and who has done many things, and now I work as an executive leadership coach, supporting leaders who are looking at healthier ways perhaps to live their journey and to live their leadership in their organizations, whether it's their churches, their corporations, or their own companies, if they are the CEOs of their own organizations, to really bring them back to living their purpose. And that's really the bit I have to go on tonight with you, is to share some of my books. I've been blessed. I'm in the process of writing my 8th book. My 7th book was just published about a month and a half ago, and that is called Real Women Change the World, Letting the Good Girl Die so the Real Woman Can Live. And the point of that is truly about becoming who we are meant to be and not who we are told we are supposed to be. Because if we are embodied souls, we are intrinsically holy and we are intrinsically good. And living the best of who we are is truly living who we are meant to be. And nobody out there can tell us how to be a better us. Because if we are embodied souls, we're carrying the wisdom of spirit within us. So if we practice meditation, if we practice mindfulness, if we practice prayer, and we truly listen in the silence, we'll know who we're meant to be. And nobody could tell us better. Because we trust the message comes from spirit, it doesn't come from my ego, which is dramatically different. Some of the traits that I have discovered as we develop our ability in leadership. And I truly believe the title of this talk, the title of my 6th or 7th book, was Owning Your Leadership. And in owning your leadership, you recognize that you are called in leading your life effectively. You end up training everybody else in how to be leaders as well. Because a true mentor, a true guide, is somebody that doesn't try necessarily to mentor or guide. People put that on you. They ask you to mentor them. They ask you, or they look at you, they observe what you're doing. And you lead them simply by being the best of who you were called to be. I truly, truly believe that. And I believe in the exquisite holiness and goodness of every human being on this planet. Some choose to live in defense, some choose to live in love. But even those who choose to live in defense, whether that is anger or rage or hatred or fear, that's a choice they've made, is to live in that fear and hatred and so forth. And the choice we face all the time is, who do I want to be? Do I want to be somebody based in faith and spirit, who has called us to be as the children? Or do I want to live in the mindset of somebody who is filled with anger and rage because the world isn't fair? I believe its fairness is there. We just don't always see it. All right? So in developing our skills as leaders, as individuals guiding our own lives, as well as creating leaders in our children and in our neighbors and in our friendships, and supporting others and living their own leadership, the first skill set we need to develop is emotional intelligence. When you develop emotional intelligence, you begin to recognize all of your own buttons. You begin to recognize all of the things that happen to you when somebody says or does something. I was a therapist for 20-something years. When I left religious life, I actually moved to Manhattan, became an international airline stewardess. So I was a sex symbol for a number of years, flying for TWA, when it was the only people who flew airplanes at those points in times were businessmen. And we had to be gorgeous, sexier, and thinner, and all those other long eyelashes and falls. We used to wear all these things we wear till they'd be gorgeous sex symbols, because that's how you got the men to fly overseas with you. I was an international airline stewardess. And recognize the power we have in everything we do to lead people into a place where they can look themselves in the mirror, or to lead people in a place where they live their life in shame. When you choose to develop your own emotional intelligence, you know your buttons, you know the things that bring up shame in you, you know the things that bring up anger in you, and you begin to recognize, wait a minute, if someone said something to me yesterday, and yesterday it didn't faze me, and today it enrages me, is it really what they said? Or is it where you are today versus where you were yesterday? And it never really is about them. Because with emotional intelligence, we begin to understand ourselves so well that we understand when we go into fear. We understand when we go into self-hatred. We understand when we go into those places where we don't like who we are. And some of us latch out and blame other people. You said this, you made me feel this, you made me do this, you made me react that way, when in fact, I chose to react that way because I was in fear. I chose to react that way because I was angry. And with emotional intelligence, you move into a place where you don't blame anybody for any emotion you ever had. You take full responsibility for everything you say and everything you do. Can you imagine living your life where you are at such peace that you take responsibility for everything you think, feel, and say. And you don't put that on anybody else. You end up, to me, moving far beyond confidence. I have an issue with people talking about always developing self-confidence. My thought is, why not develop self-certainty? Confidence to me is the first step. Certainty is the adult step. That I absolutely know who I am. I absolutely know what my values are. I absolutely know what I think about. I may not understand a topic you're talking about, and I may say to you, I don't understand that, please tell me more. But I'm saying that as an adult who understands fully who I am, and I'm fully aware that I don't even know half the questions, much less half the answers of everything that's going on in the world. But I can be absolutely certain about who I am and the place I want to take on this planet, the way I want to walk through this world. With that, we also, with emotional intelligence, recognize that every one of us is a wounded soul. Every one of us has been rejected. Every one of us has been betrayed. Every one of us has been hurt. Welcome to humanity. It doesn't make you a victim. It simply makes you a human. I grew up in a home where my parents would fight over whether or not my dad could beat us up with a closed fist or an open fist. I grew up in a home where my dream growing up was to be adopted by one of the doctors in the emergency room. And you can pity that poor victim or recognize what is the strengths that came out of that upbringing. What are the strengths that come out of for that individual? Always we can look at our lives and see victim, or we can look at our lives and see the challenges. It's just a journey. Who we define ourselves as is what really begins to let us know we are the leaders of our own lives. That I'm going through my life as somebody who recognizes she's a child of God. And that all of us are as well. Whatever our faith, wherever we're from, whatever our nationality, we are all in this world together. We're all walking here as one. And if I can't see that, I need to feel better than. And I will find reason to justify why I am better than. And it'll have nothing to do with spirit. It'll have everything to do with my ego. With emotional intelligence as well, we recognize that when somebody else snaps at us, it really has anything to do with us. They may say it's us, but whatever we're doing, if we had done it yesterday, it probably would have been okay. But they came in the door angry, or they came in the door exhausted, and we were the first time they had an opportunity to let it out. I'm not saying that's right, but I'm saying that means it's not about us. None of us is saintly. We're all human. But more times than not, if we can step back and say, whoa, what's really going on? You find out that they can take 15, 20 minutes away and get themselves together and go back, and you realize now you have a chance to talk. Now you have a chance to recognize what it's really about. And with that emotional intelligence, your life becomes still filled with lots of passion. Anger isn't the only way to feel passion. Life is a way to feel passion. Passion about anything and everything on the journey is a way to feel passion. And we all have to live our own journeys our own way. I used to spend hours in the morning working out, listening to the news. And I have this news station I used to listen to every night. And about a year and a half ago, said, I'm not doing any more news. I get about 15 minutes in the morning. I know we're not at war. My kids are going to be okay. I will continue with my day. Because I know me emotionally, I don't do a whole lot passively. I don't have a very passive personality. I tend to get very emotionally involved. And it's much easier for me not to be stimulated, knowing my emotional intelligence, not to be stimulated, so I don't need to fight anybody on any issue. I just pray to Spirit to bless us all, keep us walking in His light, and let us keep going forward. You have to know what triggers you, what puts you in a place that makes you uncomfortable in your own skin, and then question, why do you do that to yourself all the time? And when you understand other people, you recognize they're walking the journey the same as you. With that level of emotional intelligence, and to maintain it, you find out that you need to practice some type of mindfulness To me, mindfulness is the new buzzword for what used to be meditation, what used to be prayer. If you take time, I take time every morning before I get out of bed, literally, before I put my feet on the floor, I take time to do a quiet meditation, a quiet reflection. How did I wake up? Did I wake up feeling depressed? Did I wake up excited about something that's happening today? Did I wake up already burdened because I know of the 42 things I have to get done before 6 o'clock? How did I wake up today? And recognize that how I get out of bed is my choice. How I woke up isn't. That happened in my unconscious. But by the time I put my feet on the floor, I have a choice to feel pressured or to feel blessed. And at night before I go to bed, I sit back and look over my day. When I was in religious life, we used to call this examination of conscience. Unfortunately, we never got any chances to commit sins, so we really had nothing to really think about on our conscience. It was always, unfortunately, very clean, no good times. But in the name of the Father. But in any event, what I do now is I sit and I reflect. How did my day go? And it's not about what did I do, what did I accomplish? It's how did it go? Did I go into defense today? Did I go into anger today? Did I go into fear today? Did I feel inadequate today? What story was I telling myself if I felt inadequate today? Was I dumb? Was I old? Was I fat? Was I uncoordinated? What was I? What judgment did I put on me today? So I can know how to heal that wound. So I can know how to put me back in balance before I go to sleep. And that reflection really supports you. That mindfulness supports you, I believe, remembering who you are as a child of God. One of the things as I said, I was a therapist for years. For 20-something years, I saw 42 patients a week. And when I while I had my practice, I opened up a school. I founded the Institute of Healing Arts and Sciences. I had a school for 19 years, teaching a method of energy medicine I created. About 60% of my students were physicians, nurses, occupational therapists, massage therapists, and 40% were lay people. And teach them a method of energy medicine, but looking at the psychological and spiritual causes of physical disease and disorders. So I had this company going as well, and really called all of my students to take time to reflect and to come into prayer and live their life as a prayer. Prayer can be something we do, or it can be a lifestyle. Just as mindfulness can be something we do once or twice a day, or it can be the way we walk through the world, mindful of what we feel and mindful of what we're saying and doing to others. I didn't realize it hurt their feelings. They were collapsing right in front of you and you didn't notice what was going on for you. And that state of mindfulness, I think one of the gifts it does, and I would tell my students this as well, if you can imagine yourself sitting on this chair, and in the last two pews of the church is your spouse or your lover, is your children, your company, or where you work, is your home or your friends and your family of origin, all back there, and you're here. You recognize that you are not your life. You are not your children. You are not your spouse. All of those elements you brought into your life, you were here separate and apart from all of them. And unfortunately, many of us were given that message that the two shall be one, which means one of you has to disappear. The fact is, you are here and all of that is back there. And when you recognize that, you never get lost in your life. And you recognize these are all blessings you've been given, blessings you brought into your journey by your choice. Blessings that you were here to support in developing their leadership as well, or maintaining their leadership as well, while you maintain yours as a separate entity. And mindfulness reminds you that I exist apart from all of that. Because unfortunately, many of us disappear. Men frequently can get lost in their positions in the old days, and women get lost in their children and in their families. And we don't create a gift to others when we don't exist. It's our uniqueness that is the gift we give to our children and our families and our friends, and the uniqueness we give to our partners. Because then they get to have somebody they're in relationship with. There's a wonderful man I know who wrote a book, and in it he stresses the three elements of life as he sees it. And it is your why, your be, and your do. Why are you here on this planet? What is your sole purpose? I believe every one of us was born with purpose. Every one of us came in here to make this world a better place. And every one of us has different skill sets to do that. And finding your why am I here, allows you to bring your purpose into your work. It allows it to bring your purpose into your life, into your family. Why are you here? And every one of us has an answer to that, if we're willing to explore it. And who do you want to be while you're living your why? I believe I'm here to call others to recognize the spirituality of this journey, because it's so easy to forget it in the world we live in. As I call people to leadership, I call them to recognize that as an embodied soul, they are living their spiritual journey of leadership, and bringing others up into their leadership as well. That's my why I am here. Who do I want to be while I do that? That's a really important thing to do, because what we do is irrelevant if we don't recognize who we want to be. I could be the genius authority. I've got something like 21 letters I can put after my name. One of my books I have, I think, about 15, 16 letters. And I looked at it after it was printed and thought, this is absolutely ridiculous. And I threw them all out, and I keep PhD. I thought, oh my God, if that isn't enough to impress you, nothing is going to. All those other letters, you don't even know what they mean. Anyway, I could have made them up. You wouldn't have known the difference. You have no idea the fortune I paid for every one of those sets of letters, all right? So you recognize, who do I want to be? I don't want to be the genius. I don't want to be the intimidating, powerful force. So it really comes down to, who do you want to be? I want to be a fellow journeyer who may have a wee bit more wisdom than many, because I've spent so many years doing mindfulness. I was blessed with the gift of religious life that really taught me the difference between spirituality and religion. So I've been blessed with the gift of living true spirituality for the past 30, 40 years. And when you know then, who do you want to be while you're living your why? What is it you want to do? And if you're truly doing what you came here to do, you recognize that over the years, it may have changed in presentation, but it never changed in substance. When I was very little in the projects, and I saw all these women sitting on the front stoop, most of them being abused, physically abused by their husbands, who usually alcohol was an issue. We were Irish, the Irish disease of alcoholism. And in the projects where the men felt so beaten down, booze was their way of dealing. And my dream at that time was to teach these women, was to become a social worker, to teach these women how to develop a life for themselves, away from abuse. That didn't happen. When I entered religious life, I worked in residential treatment with teenagers. And when I left religious life, as I said, I moved to Manhattan, became an international airline stewardess. And then what I did was teach men and women as therapy. I did lots of couples work, and I did lots of individual work, teaching them how to own their power. And then as an executive leadership coach, now working with men and women who want to live their life with purpose, who want to work in companies with purpose. So teaching them as well about owning their power, owning their leadership. So my work is the same. It's just changed outward presentation. And I believe for every one of us, if we really live our why, we're continuously becoming more and more of who we are meant to be. And what we do becomes irrelevant, because as we grow, we develop more wisdom. As we grow, we develop more experience. God willing, as we grow, we develop more capabilities. So what we're going to give back is going to be different than what we could give back 20 years ago or 30 years ago. So as we continue to grow, our ability to give back keeps changing and increasing, so what we do will change and increase with that. You know, I'm now writing, I couldn't go to college, and I'm writing my 8th book. My dad didn't believe in education. I taught in graduate school for years. I developed this method of energy medicine and became a clinical instructor at UConn Medical School. And I wasn't allowed to go to nursing school because I went to an unaccredited inner city high school. And yet I was good enough to be a clinical instructor at UConn Medical School for a number of years. So we recognize, who do we want to be? What do we want to do? God willing, they keep growing and changing, but God willing, we also realize that it's our choice. That it's absolutely our choice. I recognize the time, and I want to honor that for everybody. What I've developed is, in one of my books here, actually a book called Owning Your Leadership, what I put out there was what I've discovered as 5 different types of leadership. We were raised with the thought that it was linear. There was the CEO who directed everybody and told everybody what to do and how to do it, and everybody wanted to keep their job, so they listened. What we've learned now is so dramatically different. It's always existed. It's just, thankfully, we're now more open to seeing what has always been. And everybody has their own perspective on it. For myself, I have 5 archetypes of leadership. And I'll very quickly go over that because of time. But recognize your style of leadership. Recognize who you are as a leader. We have visionary leaders. We have wonderful visionary leaders who think so far out of the box. They take us to places we never ever could have imagined. Who invented electricity? Whoever would have thought of that? Somebody thought out of the box. There's got to be a better way than just fire and oil. And we have electricity. Somebody thought out of the box and thought, my goodness, we ought to have a computer. With all the resistance initially to that concept, and yet look at our world. Always thinking out of the box, and now thinking out of the box, that in recognizing that when we have more women in the C-suite, we have more women CEOs, companies are literally having greater profits. We have research to show this, that when we have women in the C-suite, when we have women in the CEO positions, and we have men and women working together, the company has far greater profit. Because women are bringing collaborative leadership in. Visionary women are bringing collaborative leadership into organizations. And in doing so, the companies are opening up to greater potential, greater vision, and the women being nurturers, as a generalization, are bringing conscious leaders up through the ranks, recognizing that everybody has a different gift, and when everybody's unique gifts are presented, the organization wins. The people win and the organizations win. Visionary leaders are imperative. I have a girlfriend, Marilyn. She's absolutely amazing. I used to live up in Granby in West Hartford for a number of years, and somebody said to Marilyn, there's people under the bridges, sleeping under the bridges, and we ought to get them blankets. Winter's coming. And so many of us would have just collected blankets from friends, unneeded blankets from friends. Marilyn thought that was an awful idea. Marilyn decided to contact several different organizations and get them to donate thousands and thousands and thousands of blankets. And once the blankets were donated, they said, Marilyn, you should run the company, I'm out of here. Marilyn had a vision. She was a catalyst, got the idea going, and then she was done. She wanted nothing to do with it. Somebody else said, gee, Marilyn, there's a lot of Christians in Hartford, especially Catholics, who really just go and grab a sandwich someplace. How wonderful if they had a reflective place to go to and have lunch. She said, well, we should create a restaurant in a bookstore in the middle of downtown Hartford. So she said, let's create the gathering place. It'll be like Spirit gathered people together, Christ gathered people together. And so she opens up the gathering place. She gets it going, she gets people in. This carpenter does this one does this. She gets a chef in, gets the lunches going, gets the bookstore set up, and she bolts. because she's the catalyst that gets things going. That's a type of leadership that we absolutely need. And somebody else is more than willing to come over and play King of the Mountain, because that's the type of leadership they like. So know your type of leadership. One isn't any better than the other. And we have team leaders. Team leaders that come and they work in an organization. They'll never be the CEO, the COO. But they are phenomenal at bringing teams together and getting to see and help teams work together, recognizing the gifts and the strengths of every member of the team. So rather than having competition going, everybody works as a unified one. And always, as we know, the sum of the parts is always so much greater. That team leader is imperative. Marilyn would never made a good team leader. She'd be long gone before the team had a chance to gel. All right? Doesn't mean she's weak. But unfortunately, we've had many people promoted up and up and up. They're so good at what they do, they're promoted into a leadership position, when that's not where they belong, leadership of an organization, when they belong over here. They were phenomenal salesmen, top salesmen in the country. And they said, you're so good, we're going to put you into a management position, you can teach other people how to sell. And then they got fired because they stunk at the job and left feeling defeated, rejected, and worthless, because the position was shifted when they were phenomenal leadership here, but not that. Know your style of leadership, know what it is. You also have supportive leaders. They want to be the VP. They never want to be the CEO. They want to be behind the scenes. They're the one that makes the star look fantastic. They're the one that manages all the support staff. They love the power, they love the authority, it causes them to grow, but they have no desire to be out front. Honor that. That's not a lesser position. And if that's who you are in whatever organizations you volunteer at or you work at, recognize not everybody's meant to be up front. It doesn't mean you're not ambitious. It means that not the type of leadership that's yours. And then you have that leader who has to be the CEO, has to be out front, has to be the one making things happen, because they are useless at sitting still. They get antsy sitting still for 10 minutes. They have to be doing, they have to be making things happen. They want to implement the changes the visionary leader thought about. They want to get out there and make it happen. That's their gift. Let them run the show, because that's what they're good at. And then you have organizational leaders. Somebody, you create a project for the church. There is somebody that's going to say, oh my God, I love it. Now I can create procedures, I can create protocols, I can develop programs, I can do this. And they're happy all by themselves, sitting in a back room, creating procedures and protocols. I would shoot myself. But they would absolutely love it, because that makes them feel so in control and so organized. Recognize that we are all different. Not one any better than the other, just all different. And what a blessing when we recognize that not one of us is more gifted, we're just differently gifted. And with emotional intelligence, you begin to own the way in which you are emotionally gifted, in which you are gifted in spirit, in which you are gifted in talent. And with mindfulness, you sit and you recognize that, knowing your why, your be, and your do, looking at the types of leaderships you have, and you may have two that are most pronounced. You then have to step back. His name, I knew their history, I knew everything about them. When my school got so big, I had 30 on my teaching staff, and I would walk down the hallway and I'd be like the principal, and I think, oh my God, I don't like this. I have so many students I don't even know. This no longer feeds me. What happened? We became so successful. I became a pioneer in the field of integrative healthcare. So much so that I had students flying in from all over the country. In Canada, the government of Australia pays people to receive the type of energy medicine I created. It's expanded in many countries. And so all of a sudden, I didn't know the people who were attending my school. So to me, that was a feeling of loneliness. Where if my ego was what governed me, I would have known what a massive success I was. But instead, the connection is what feeds me. And so what I missed was knowing who you are as you walk into my space. So know what feeds you, know who you are, know what your values are. Because no matter how much good you're doing, if it doesn't match your values, you will not feel fed. And I believe you won't be doing what you came here to do. Because Spirit called us to be filled with unconditional love. And we can't give unconditional love to others unless we're filled with it ourselves. So if we walk with Spirit, and God is love, we walk in unconditional love, and it's what we share to the world. And imagine if every one of us walked in leadership from a place of unconditional love, with emotional intelligence and knowing who we are, and recognizing when somebody else jumps at us, it probably has nothing to do with us. It's their bad day. We don't have to walk around waiting to be assaulted, waiting to have some jerk yell at us, waiting to have some idiot cut in front of us when they knew we were going fast and they shouldn't have gotten in our way. You know, and we can laugh and say, as I say to myself, so close to sainthood, just a few 100 miles away. You know, take a break and look at your humanity and honor it, and then it's so much easier to honor it in other people. And you end up truly consciously leading your journey, consciously making decisions, rather than being one of those that says, I never really chose this, I just ended up here. If you just ended up someplace, you weren't actively participating in your life. And if you didn't actively participate in your life, I believe you betrayed yourself. Because we weren't given the intelligence, we were given not to use it. We weren't given the ability for self-awareness to not acknowledge it. Know who you are. Make your choices consciously. And we don't always know what we're walking into. We never did. How many of us had children and later said, what on earth was I thinking? You know? I don't know a mother out there who hasn't at least once said, if a window was open, somebody's going out. I don't know if it's going to be one of them or me, but I don't think I like this anymore. I changed my mind. But you're stuck. You birthed them. There they are, darling. You know? Walk in consciously, knowing that we don't know what we're getting into. But we're walking in awake. And then as we walk in awake, we don't get to blame anybody for the choices we've made. And we get to honor ourselves for making them from the best we had to offer at that moment in time. And know that as we go forward, we become more and more of who we're meant to be and more blessed. And we truly end up consciously being leaders of our lives, leaders in our companies, leaders in our circle of friends. So we don't sit around wondering why nobody's called us in 6 months when you've never picked up the phone. If you don't have enough friends, pick up the phone. If you don't have anything to do, pick up the phone or get out of the house. There's always things to do. There's always people to love. There's always people ready to love you if you allow it. All right? Thank you so very, very much. That is enough, and I will stop there. Thank you. I was asked to offer the opportunity for questions and answers. Do you have any questions? And I'll try to have an answer. If you don't, I'll survive that trauma. But if you do, I want to be able to support you with that. Yeah?
What were your 5 archetypes?
The 5 archetypes was the visionary leader, the team leader, the supportive leader, the right out there, the head leader, okay, the head of the organization, and then the organizational leader, all right? And to me, if you can own which one is yours, and they're all equal, there isn't, and I wish I could, but I can't. Because if you got that job, you wouldn't wish you could. You would wish you were out of it. You know who you are and honor that. Any other questions, anything else I can help you with? I hope I stimulated something in you to think about, to pray on, and to grow in. Because if I can't inspire and help you grow, I'm just up here wasting your time. You know, and I truly want to help all of us as we walk through the journey become more and more of who we're meant to be. Okay, then thank you so very much. She has a ton of food up there. I happened to walk by this cheese and crackers, which is my weakness in life. Know thyself. I do, Lord. Thank you so much. Thank you, hon. Oh, no, that's fine. That's